This is DJ.
This is Ish.
And this is
Season 8
of Better Let Me Tell You. Is the answer.
I couldn't remember the
where
words.
everything happens. Contact. Let's make contact. 3, 2, 1. Contact. Well, this is not episode 321, but it is episode
329.
329. We weren't that off, though.
No, not that off at all.
That off. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode 329. ¿Cómo está todo el mundo?
Everybody's good. We're finally out of January.
Okay. Does January take 5 years every year?
I feel like it must, but I think this time it took its time.
Yeah. It's like 11.
And yeah, you know, like this Sunday's Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like January took forever, and February's like, yeah, no, we're almost done.
I think that next month, in March, the Dollar Tree would have Christmas stuff again.
Maybe.
For sure.
Bare minimum Thanksgiving.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving is just a blur.
Although maybe not, because with the tariffs, who knows?
It's not going to be, it's going to be the, I don't know, $5 tree.
The $5 tree, yes.
And then, it's like, oh, no. Yeah, that will change it up a bit.
The $5 tree sounds like the really bad sequel to the Giving Tree.
The Giving Tree. To believe that only my whole thing with that book, right?
Mm-hmm.
I only give that book to the most special people in my life.
Yes.
So I've only given it to like 5 people. I've given it to
Nope.
you? Okay, well. Anyway, so because I have this tradition that like there's 2 things that I do that are very, I don't know. I started on my own. I mean, they're not a secret, so it's like I could say it here. So I like to give the Giving Tree because like everybody grew up on the Giving Tree, and I mean, the Giving Tree is one of those books that I think a lot of times as a kid, you don't really understand the significance of that book, although it's a children's book. So I think most people, when they're older, it could be even in their 20s, they sort of read that book, and now that they're older, it hits differently, and they really understand it. And I think that the older that you get, the significance of the book changes. Mm-hmm. It evolves. So, that's a very special book to me. So, like, to very, very special people in my life, in any capacity, I usually will give that book to. Apparently not all, but I will give the book to. The other tradition that I have, and this one I'm really proud of. So whenever somebody in my family or one of my friends' kids, people that I'm very, very close to, they have a child, a baby, the day they're born, when I go visit them at the hospital, I take a birthday cake with a 0 candle, with birthday hats, some party favors. Right. So we could have a birthday for the baby, because nobody ever celebrates the birthday. Right. Because what you are celebrating your entire life is an anniversary of your birthday. Yeah. And I always thought, like, why don't they get you a cake on your real birthday? Because that's really your real birthday. Right. You only have one real birthday.
That's true.
Right? The rest are just commemorations of your birthday, right? So I always do that. I get a birthday cake to the baby, and we have a little happy birthday to you at the hospital. Yes. But don't be too loud. You don't want the room next door complaining.
Right, because it's a hospital.
Because if not, it will be happy birthday to you. Anyway, bueno, what a week.
It has been. I mean, I feel like we've been saying that since January, but
yeah, we're going to be saying that a lot.
A lot, yes.
A lot. What a week. Speaking of weeks,
yes.
And how is everybody?
Everybody's doing good.
You know what? I actually want to say something because I don't want to forget this. I don't want to forget this.
Let's do this at the top of the show.
This week, because we were supposed to do it last week. So, we have the best listeners on earth.
All of you Pero Primos.
We've talked about our Pero Primos and how they DM us and how they tell us funny little life stories and little, stuff. So we have a listener. Her name is Emily. And Emily has been listening to us apparently for some time. She lives in Seattle, and her sister Ginger has, she reached out to us, and she was saying if we could please give Emily a shout out. So Emily in Seattle,
Emily in Seattle.
our pero prima. Thank you for being a listener. Thank you for being so awesome.
Yeah.
Thank your sister Ginger
For reaching out to us.
to us. I was, in full disclosure, Emily, I was gonna do it last week in our season premiere, but I had it on my list of things to do.
I know, but we just
but that episode got derailed.
Listen, Emily, you listened to the show. You know what happened last week.
Right. There was just so much that after, like, the moment we finished recording, I was like, crap, I didn't give her the shout out.
Yeah.
So Emily, thank you so much for listening. And yes. Thank you so much for listening and for being, a great pero prima.
Absolutely. I think it's fascinating though. Emily and Ginger. Those don't sound like names from the same parents.
You're right. Well, maybe.
No, it doesn't sound like.
Was Ginger Spice's name really Ginger? It was Jerry.
True, but she told us her name is Ginger. Ginger is a name.
It is. It is.
know?
Wait. Who was in a sitcom called
Gilligan's Island.
No. And It's a Living.
Well, also, It's a Living. Shirley Ralph.
Shirley Ralph was
Shirley
Ginger.
Ralph
That's
was
the first
Ginger.
time I heard Ginger.
And so, really, you heard that before Gilligan's Island?
We didn't watch Gilligan's Island at home. Immigrants.
That's right. That was those. Was it the training years? The training years. Yes.
I didn't know. When I knew about Gilligan's Island,
Full House.
Full House.
Because of Gilligan.
Right. I'm like, I think I knew that it was a show that they were on the island,
Right.
but I didn't know of the show.
Yeah.
I knew of I Love Lucy because, of course, he was Cuban. Right. So, of course, we knew I Love Lucy.
Yeah.
But it's the training years. I told you, there is a whole skit in Full House. I think it's season 4 when they start singing, "Doe, a deer, a female deer."
Yeah.
When that came out, I had no idea what that was.
You thought it was original.
I thought they were just singing a song. And then I didn't even know that, like, there's a part where they go, "Oh, I feel I'm in a Julie Andrews movie." Nope, went right over my head. I didn't know that.
You didn't even know who Julie Andrews was.
No. But you put a novela, theme song,
Put
or you put Antopacio or Cristal, or all those, Maria Elena, all those great soap operas
El
from the
extraño retorno
de Diana Salazar, everything with Lucia Mendez, Veronica Castro. You put on anything of that, and I knew that, but I did not know Julie Andrews.
They were not mentioning that on Full House.
They were not mentioning that. My big 5 shows were Full House, Who's the Boss, Growing Pains, The Cosby Show, of course.
Right.
And then I watched Good Times. Right. That's something that's like, we talked about that before.
These are not shows that we're going to casually mention. Los ricos también lloran.
No, they're not.
Okay.
The Evans family in Chicago
was not.
But you know what I do remember? In Good Times, I remember there is an episode, because Good Times was set in Chicago.
Right.
That JJ, they were talking about that they were gonna create that he fell, and he was like, because I fell down at the whatever department at Marshall Field's department store, and he kept saying Marshall Field's department store over and over again. So then when I moved to the Midwest, I'm like, oh my God, there's a Marshall Field. And then I didn't know that Marshall Fields was it was based in Chicago. And it's sort of like the Macy's.
It was like the Burdines.
Or the Burdines here, but like the Marshall Fields in Chicago, which is still there, but it's a Macy's now. It's equivalent to the Macy's in Herald Square. Like, it's a big deal. And I'm like, I learned that from watching Good Times. Yeah. But what I was going to say was that I remember, this was probably in like the late 80s, early 90s, that I would watch Good Times. And Good Times seemed so old to me.
That was like, what, 10, 15?
It was probably no older than 15 years at that point. And then I think back at something that's 15 years now would be 2010. And I'm like, that's not old.
At all.
Like, I'm like, it's 2010. It's like...
That's perspective.
They already had smartphones.
You're right.
Yeah, so they were already on social media.
The technology was already there.
But somehow when, in like the early 90s, stuff from the late 70s or whatever, 15 years ago, as a child, you're like, oh my God, this is like the dinosaur age.
It just looked
They have bell bottoms. Whatever that was.
It looks faded.
Yeah, and I used to watch these shows not knowing how they worked, not knowing that they killed off James Evans in Good Time. Do you know that was in like sitcom world, that was one of the first like traumatic like storylines that I remember watching and being like, they killed off James Evans in Good Times. That's the same famous scene that she's like, she gets the bowl,
telegram.
and she's like, damn, and she throws the bowl. I remember but why did they kill James? I mean, I didn't know that they had contractual issues.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
That wasn't, and we didn't have Wikipedia then, so yeah.
No. You know what? That was actually one of my favorite shows. Good Times. I loved Good Times. It was just, it's still hilarious.
It stands up, but I think a lot of the Norman Lear stuff does.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
And I remember being a kid, which was a real problem on the show, on the production of the show. I remember being a kid and thinking like, yeah, JJ es un pujo. Like, he's not funny anymore.
Right. It's the Steve Urkel effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was the original Steve Urkel, if you think about it.
He was. And you know what's so I remember like last year, not too long ago, I started rewatching Family Matters. And it's so interesting what Family Matters was and what it turned into a science fiction show.
Yes, it did.
Because especially when Steve Urkel
became
Stefan, that he had like a machine that he would turn into Stefan. I'm like, oh, okay. This is not what the creators of Family Matters first envisioned.
No, when they spun Harriet off of Perfect Strangers, this was not the plan.
Yeah. I remember some stupid ass person on Instagram arguing with me that Family Matters was not a spinoff of Perfect Strangers. And I'm like, it literally is. Like, there was a promo done of Larry and Balky from Perfect Strangers talking about Harriet getting her own show.
People don't know anything.
Yeah. So speaking of people, something I wanted to bring up as a topic today is that
we're talking about People Magazine.
Huh?
We're going to talk about People Magazine.
People Magazine. No, that's not what we're talking about. No. Is it the issue coming out like the most beautiful person in the world? Is that still a thing?
They still do the most beautiful. They do the sexiest man, and I think they do like the 50 most beautiful people. They don't single one beautiful person, but they single one sexy man.
Do we still like that, or have we?
I mean, I'm okay with it. I like beauty.
Okay. No, because in today's day and age, you know, maybe.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, maybe I'm not the barometer. Yeah.
Well, you are beautiful.
Oh, no matter what they say.
No, I was not going with that song because I'm not a big fan of hers. I was going with "You're beautiful, it's true."
Oh,
I saw your face. In a crowded place, and I don't know what to do. Okay, anyway, so
James Blunt.
Eso mismo.
That's why I love him as a producer.
He's like Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So here in Miami, well, in the whole country, in a couple of weeks, va a empezar spring break.
Yes, it is.
So here in Miami, the city of Miami Beach has taken like a lot of measures to curtail like spring break behavior, including $100 parking fees.
They're kind of building on last year's initiative.
Yeah. I mean, the city of Miami Beach is really, really like taking this very seriously, and they're going to have, I don't know how much police presence and all that. So we've seen the videos that things get out of hand there. So I guess there's a part of me that like, on one hand, I'm like, okay, things are out of hand.
We got to do something.
There is property, there's
damage.
There have been shootings. Like, things are out of hand, right? But then on the other hand, I'm kind of like, let people have their fun, especially nowadays that we live in such a society.
People need to release.
People need that release and escape. So I'm kind of like, I see the two sides of it. So what do you think about that? Do you think that they se le pasa la mano, or, they're exaggerating, or do you think this really needs to be controlled? Okay,
I don't think they're exaggerating insofar as...
Because Miami Beach has gone out of hand.
I was going to say, insofar as, we've seen the videos. We live here, so it's not even like que nos están haciendo cuento, right? Like, we see it on the news.
They're giving us stories.
They're giving us stories, Blanche. What I will say, though, is, they just need to be a little bit... And I think this is what I say, it's like the evolution of last year, because last year, with the parking garages, for instance, they just, during the spring break, they just closed the garages.
This year, I think parking is going to start at $100.
Right. But the problem was that last year, they closed it to everybody. So if you worked on the beach, your garage was closed. What the hell were you supposed to do? Right? So at least now it seems like, okay, so I guess it's $100 if you're a tourist. If you maybe have a parking decal, it's okay. Again, so I'm applauding the thought process and the evolution of it to not just be this blanket, like, just shut it all down. Right. Because I think then, you're trying to curtail something, but you also don't want these businesses to be affected, right? Look, we're locals. generally speaking, locals are not going to Miami Beach during spring break time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we don't go. Look, we don't go during spring break. We don't go during the long weekends. We just don't, because we know it's going to be full of tourists, right? So if you are going to try to deter people from visiting, you got to do something to make sure that at least the locals are still feeling comfortable going,
right?
Because if not, now you've
because people live in Miami Beach.
Right. Because, but that's another thing. So you got to make the people who live there feel comfortable enough to want to go out those weeks and actually, spend money at the restaurants or whatever, right? It's a balancing act. But I will say I like the spot that they did, and I think they may have. I don't know if they're using the same one or if they may have filmed in a revised version.
I remember the one that last year, like we're breaking up.
I thought that was very clever, right? Because what they also were saying is, if you are going to show up and behave, right? Yes, they were saying don't come, but there was an underlying current there of like, look, it's not me, it's you. You can't just show up, and that's not just Miami Beach, not just for spring break. You can't just show up anywhere and just be like a complete fucking ass, right? Like if you're gonna show up somewhere, you got to have some common decency. And unfortunately, as we know, there was a lot of shootings, a lot of property damage, and you know what? In service of, okay, yes, you're bringing in tourist dollars, but then these businesses have to invest that tourist money into repairs. So what did they make?
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, again, spring break has gotten completely out of hand. So something has to be done. But again, you don't want to you want people to have their fun, but you need to have people. Look, having fun in spring break has never been an orderly fun. There's
Correct.
Always been wild moments.
But there's levels.
But the moment that, you start having like significant property damage and you start having like shootings and you start having like very extreme acts of violence,
right?
That's a whole like different conversation.
Yeah. That's not trying to stuff as many people as you can into a phone booth.
Right. Well, if you find a phone booth.
No, but I'm saying that was like an old, like when they used to have it like in Daytona, you would hear like, I'm talking the 60s.
We talked about this a little bit earlier today. I remember watching, when I was a teenager, the spring break on MTV. And I'm like, what is that? ¿Quién hace eso? Like spring break? Like, because, that's not big in Cubans, or Latin people.
Well,
spring break.
Well, it's also not big here in Miami because we have the beach here all year round.
Yeah.
So
those kids from Virginia were going to Panama City,
right? Yeah,
and Daytona Beach,
escaping the cold. So for us, spring break is just kind of always here.
Yeah,
it's not a
spring break is a lifestyle, bro.
It's a lifestyle, exactly. It's not something that happens just once a year. It's a way of life.
I have a question.
Okay,
I have a very serious question.
Oh God.
And Junior, you could answer, and our pero primos, they can answer.
Okay.
So folklore tells us that if you eat, because I went to the beach this weekend.
Yes.
That if you eat, usually a hearty meal, and you go to the beach, you go in the water after you ate said meal, te da una embolia.
Yes, instant death.
So I have a question. What exactly is an embolia, and what happens to your body when you have an embolia? And do you know anybody who's been a victim of an embolia? Because I don't know anybody. I fear it like the plague, right? And it was instilled, that fear as a child was instilled. I still hear the word and I get a little triggered, right? But what is exactly an embolia, and who has died or had some type of, damage from an embolia? Like, I really want to know, people. Like, if you know, drop it in the comments. Like, I really want to know.
I will say I don't know. And Junior, if you do know, feel free to pipe in. I don't know what an embolia is, but I do know what they're talking about. Like I know what the overarching cautionary tale is.
It's one of digestion.
It's that you can get a cramp while you're out swimming so far that then you can't get back to shore and
you're going to drown.
And you drown.
You just made that up.
No. That is the overarching like thing. Now,
so an embolia is a cramp.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know if an embolia is a cramp per se, but I know that that's the overarching, like, porque you comiste, fuiste y te dio un cramp.
How far are you swimming into the ocean?
I don't know. They lived on an island.
Well, no, embolia traveled to Florida because when I was a kid going to the beach.
Right, but I don't know how far people swim when they live on an island. Maybe they feel emboldened.
Well, as
I've
far
seen
as
Moana.
as far as people swim in a peninsula, like, you know, the fear of Embolia was, you know, instilled in me from a very young
100%.
age.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I went to Miami Beach growing up.
And it didn't matter what you ate.
No.
It was one chip or like
Una Embolia.
or
it was
like
certain.
fricassé de pollo. It was Embolia.
It was certain death.
And by the way, Embolia. This is why I say I don't know what an Embolia is exactly, but I will say an Embolia can't be a cramp of the swimming and everything, because they even, I don't know, growing up, you also weren't even supposed to get in the shower.
Right. So what, are you going to cramp up and drown in the shower?
Well, you can drown in less than an inch of water, but I don't. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure what the actual Embolia.
My love and my love.
No.
That is wrong. I should have not done that.
And it came from you and not me. Also, it's around this time frame.
It will take an eternity to break us.
The chains of Amistad.
I remember when that song came out, I'm like, ¿Qué dijo? Wait, she's like, the chains of hold us. I'm like, ¿Qué dijo? The chains of Amistad. Ah, okay, now I know.
Yes. Now we can connect the dots.
Yeah. Oh man.
And it happened around this time.
It happened before the Grammys.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
the Grammys were this week.
Right.
We're going to talk about the Grammys.
We are going to talk about the Grammys. But yeah, that's why. And I don't even know how to spell Embolia, so I don't know that I can even Google it.
It's an embolism.
It's an embolism.
Embolism. Embolia.
Okay, tell us more.
Okay, now that he says that, it makes total sense. I never thought about it.
Well, I mean, we know what an embolism is. I don't need to tell you.
Right,
but
but I've never heard of anybody
embolia.
getting an embolism
From
from
water?
having a meal.
Okay, but you know the drasticness that our families and culture has taken.
This is
things,
true.
So
This is true.
no salga para allá porque esto y lo
Yeah, because
otro,
I've never
so-
heard of anybody being like, "Oh my God, so and so died of an embolism." Really? Yes, they were at a buffet.
Yeah, no.
I've never heard this.
And also, I don't know. I mean, you do have to be careful about lightning, but apparently a lot of people in Cuba got hit by lightning because, you know, it was always like, ay, los relámpagos. And I'm like, but I'm en una terraza. Like,
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You can't take a shower when there's relámpago. You can't be outside.
if you get struck by if the house gets struck by lightning,
Okay.
right, the house you're in, and you're just sitting in the living room, it's okay. But if you are in the bathroom, it's not.
Well, because water conducts electricity.
Oh, wow. Well, that must have been tremendo relámpago. It electrocuted the whole house.
See, that one I can draw the line to. You know, water is a conductor of electricity. So if you happen to be in the shower, then, you know, it comes in. Or I guess technically sitting on the toilet.
Yeah. No, my mom always says que voy a coger neumonía porque me acuesto con el pelo mojado.
Well.
When my hair was long, my mom would every day, she's like, ¿Tú te estás acostando con el pelo mojado? And I'm like, no, mind you, it'd be soaking wet. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Listen, I know where your mother stands on wet hair.
Why? Because she's always blow drying it?
Yes.
Yeah, my mom's always blow drying her hair.
Every single time that growing up, like when we were like in our late teens, early
Late
20s.
tweens, 30s.
But when I would go to your house like a lot, like on Friday nights after work or whatever, like, yeah, your mom was at the kitchen counter, right?
Blow drying her hair. Just blow drying her hair.
So I know the importance she places on dry hair.
My mom has a European blow dryer, so when we would go to vacation, you know, she could blow dry her hair. Porque los blow dryers de los hoteles no sirven para nada.
Well, we also have a friend who feels that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, wait, my parents. Actually, this is a great story. So when I was in college, okay, my college years specifically, we were lucky enough to go to Europe like every year. Like every year we would go to Europe. And so for like a span of several years there, we traveled a lot, like me and my parents. And my mom had bought a blow dryer, the European blow dryer. Habían then also bought una hornilla.
Okay. Pasar el café.
Pasar el café. They had to have una hornilla.
The fact that I just knew this.
So they could take la cafetera to make the coffee, right? Because they couldn't have Spanish coffee or European coffee, wherever
Which,
it is.
by the way, they have espresso.
Huh?
They have espresso in...
Right, but it's not the same thing.
No, I know, but...
It is the same thing, but it's not the same thing.
Right.
So then it was always a problem. And then sometimes, no podían llevar el azúcar. Then they have to buy azúcar in whatever country we were in. Pero el azúcar no era igual porque el azúcar de Europa no sirve. And then, it was like this whole debacle over the Cuban coffee. So there was my parents lugging una hornilla throughout Europe. And it was like the hornilla, like the one in the stove.
Yeah, like a hot plate.
No, not a hot plate. It was like the one with like the rings, like the old school ones.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
Right. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel that like that's a hotel violation of some sorts. To
It's
like
probably 12 of them.
Yeah. Pero llevaban la hornilla.
I bet milagro que they didn't just buy it. My grandparents used to have that they would use in the car on the way to the Keys, a little like cafetera that you could plug into the lighter in the car.
Wow.
Right, but this
Wow.
right, but we were going to Yuri up.
Right, but maybe they had something similar, you know.
What were they going to plug it into?
Well, they could buy a converter.
Right, but they still need una hornilla.
No, because the thing is,
La cafetera.
La cafetera is electric, so you plug.
No, but my parents didn't use una cafetera, electric cafetera. They used the old school cafetera.
Okay, but again, my grandparents only used this when they were in the car.
No, but it doesn't taste the same.
You're already in Europe.
Right, but they couldn't let go of their coffee. Let's not forget. This is revisiting when I went to Italy this past summer. You know, my parents have been to Europe, I don't know, like 7-8 times.
And Italy before.
And they had been to Italy. This was their 4th time in Italy. I know. I had gone the 3 other times with them, right? And my parents in Italy this summer was like if they had never left Dade County before. like my mom was like, ay, pero aquí no hay unos sándwich cubano, algo así. And I'm like, no, mother, you're in Italy. Mind you, when my mom was saying that to me, we were at a rest stop in Rome.
The rest stops are great.
The rest stops there are incredible. They're like a freaking Whole Foods. And behind her, there was this enormous sandwich bar. As she was telling me this, the background was a sandwich bar with like, I don't know, 100 types of sandwich with mortadella. You know, mortadella is big in Italy.
Yeah.
Mortadella. It's mortadella.
Mortadella.
That's so funny. I used to say that. So we used to have so many mortadella sandwiches as a kid. I feel mortadella in the United States is not what it was before.
No.
¿Tú no comías mucha mortadella?
I didn't care for it. But
¿A ti no te gustaba la mortadella?
No. So we wouldn't have it. But I feel like it was around more.
Yeah, and that's like growing up, we used to, we still do. My parents buy jamón serrano. And I'm like, that's not serrano ham. Like the serrano ham from Spain, que viene en la pata de puerco.
Yeah.
You know, that's similar to prosciutto. That's serrano ham.
Yeah, we would always buy jamón serrano.
That's what everybody buys.
Yeah.
Jamón serrano.
But like specifically. Like,
but it's not serrano ham. And I remember as a kid, I used to think it was jamón sedano, like the supermarket. And, you know, again, it was one of those things, you know, growing up in a Cuban household that I'm like, why is this ham not as good as the other hams? Not that I was a, you know, expert
connoisseur.
A ham connoisseur. Not that I knew about charcuterie boards, but, you know, mira, in my house growing up, we used to buy serrano ham y el único queso que compramos era el gallo azul.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with a red thing around it. Yeah, that's Gouda.
Yeah.
Those were the only things.
Oh, no,
cheddar, we didn't have cheddar.
No, we would just buy American cheese like the
Of course you did. Your parents were raised here. Queso
That's
americano.
True. That's true.
No, and then I remember, you know, like if my mom my mom doesn't cook. If we did a hamburger, they would cut the pieces of a gallo azul cheese and put it on top of the hamburger. And I'm like, this is not the same.
Well, that's got. I'm not gonna say no.
Right, but this is not.
I'm not gonna say no to it, but I get what you're saying.
This is not. It's not like, you know, they had like a really good hamburger patty and they would put like a slice of like smoked Gouda on it. No, esto eran pedazos de queso que te tiraban arriba del hamburger cuando ya salió de from being fried or whatever. Grilled.
Well, no, because it was seared because it was on a frying pan. Yeah,
seared.
Yeah.
You know, I burned my parents' kitchen down, but you know, we'll say that story some other day.
Hey, listen, Andrew did too, and look where he's at now with Night Owl.
No, there was no silver lining to me burning my parents' kitchen down.
Okay, moving on.
Do you know that? Do you know?
I don't know how to come back from this.
Okay, this is a great story growing up that I want to share with you know, our listeners throughout the years have really responded well to my parents' stories.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when I was a kid, I was probably 8 years old. My parents were in a car accident. I'll remember. It was a pretty big car accident. Not big, thank God they weren't hurt, but big that like the front of the car was ripped off, right? Like completely ripped off. And as an adult, I think about, I wasn't in the car, but as an adult, I think about that scenario all the time. And I'm going to tell you why. So the car got ripped off. The front of the car got ripped off. Okay. So they bring back my parents' car. It was a Ford Taurus. They bring back my parents' car and they put it in the backyard because the whole front was ripped off. And they eventually go to un rastro. Remember we were talking about rastros? Yeah. They go to a rastro and they buy the front end of another Ford Taurus, which wasn't even the same color, by the way. And then they dismantled the piece. This took months. They dismantled the piece they got in el rastro, and then we had a really big tree in the backyard. So my uncle, who's sort of like a mechanic and a handyman, he put a chain. The car, my parents' car that was crashed, he put a chain in the chassis, put it around the big tree, and started reversing the car to straighten up the chassis. And he welded the car back together and, welded the piece from the replacement back together. This took months, right? This took months. And he eventually got the car back together. Granted, eso no servía. Like, it leaked water. It wasn't the same color. Resolvió. Do you know why I think about that all the time? Because I think about this. Okay, so if it wasn't there, they had insurance on that car.
Okay.
Right? And that car, when it was crashed, they were still paying for it. So it was financed. Mm-hmm. So they had full coverage, right? They had full coverage. Yeah. So if you have full coverage, you have comp and collision usually. Mm-hmm. So I think about that all the time because I'm like, okay, even if the accident was their fault, they could have gone through their insurance and paid the deductible, right? But they didn't. They decided to put the car back together themselves. I think about that all the time.
Do you think it's because they just didn't understand?
I think they didn't understand.
They didn't really understand everything.
Deductibles.
Right. Like
it was in the first 10 years of them being here. It was a training year.
It was a training year. There you go.
And I think about that all the time, especially since I work a lot, because of the legal field. I work a lot with like claims and property damage and all that. I'm like, the car was financed, so they had full coverage. And I remember the term full COVID, right? I remember that swimming around in my household. And they put the car back together from pulling it back from a tree. I don't know. I think about that all the time. Like quirky little things of my parents.
But that's what made you who you are today.
No, I will go with my deductible.
Well, right. And that's why.
Right.
And that's why, because it made you who you are today. You're like, pasar ese trabajo. No, thank you.
Oye.
What happened?
Did you see the Grammys?
I did. And I have to say, this was the first Grammys in a long time that I feel like I enjoyed from beginning to end, like not in fits and spurts.
I just want to say something. I want to make an announcement. Okay. So as many of you know, Beyonce won Album of the Year for Cowboy Carter.
Yes.
Whether you love Beyonce, whether you hate Beyonce, whether you think Cowboy Carter is the greatest album ever made in the existence of humanity, or you think it's trash, I am just happy that she won. And as a society and
we can move on.
A human conscious, we can move on from this. Beyonce has Album of the Year. We can move on and life can continue. Because, I mean, I have to tell you that, like, all these years that she was nominated and she wouldn't win, like, I started getting anxiety because I'm like, tu verás, la gente van a protestar. And I have to get to work tomorrow. Like, this is going to be a protest. Beyonce didn't win. Okay, yes, she's worthy. Okay, great. But, like,
I got to get to work.
I got to get shit done. And it's like, oh my God. But I'm happy Beyonce won and we could continue with our lives now. That's all I have to say.
Well, okay, so on that topic of her winning,
on that hot topic,
that's almost a week old at this point. I will say, and look, listen, you do you when you win your awards and you emote or not, however you see fit. I think that her winning Album of the Year and her speech and her just basic like blankness in winning, I think it just solidifies what I have always said. Like my challenge with her. I don't know what a Beyonce is.
Okay, I just want to tell the Beehive to not come for me, come for him.
I don't know what a Beyonce is.
I like Beyonce. I've seen Beyonce in concert 3 times.
No, hold on. I don't dislike her.
Come for him, not for me.
I don't dislike her.
Because I'm afraid of those people. I'm afraid of the Beehive. They'll slash your tires in the middle of the night. They'll sting you like a bee.
They'll sting you like they'll put you in the hornet's nest.
I don't mess with the Beehive and with the Swifties. But don't. Don't.
I will say the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
You know what?
Yeah.
You know what? Bring it.
We love Beyonce. We love Taylor Swift.
Here's the
Blink
thing.
twice.
Here's the I don't dislike her. I think I've said before, she's very talented and this isn't, you know, all of that. All of the great, fine. But again, después de tanta cosa that we've all been made to have to live through about how she deserves the album of the year, album of the year, album of the year, album of the year. And for her to get up there and just basically be like, thank you. And walk off. While like Billie Eilish is like almost, you know, in the fetal position watching her accept the award. Lady Gaga probably went back inside the egg. like I told you, I'm like, I last year hosted, you know, a pet show at a retirement community, and I saw those people more excited when I announced who won, you know, best in show.
Yeah. Well,
okay,
you know, she's album of the year now. Well,
I just wanted her to have a little bit more something.
Speaking of the Grammys, I think we know which was my favorite moment.
Oh, it wasn't Benson Boone. No.
But the moment I saw him wearing that glittery body thing, I'm like, you would wear that.
I would totally wear that. Yeah. Actually,
I mean,
Benson, where did you get it?
Can you imagine my reaction when the president of the Grammys came out and said, and now something that we thought was never going to happen. You're telling me, ladies and gentlemen, returning to the Grammy stage, The Weeknd. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Again, I like the fact that this is what I'm saying by I enjoyed the Grammys from beginning to end. There were genuine surprises. Yeah. Because, I mean, if you didn't know it was going to happen.
Well, nobody knew it was going to happen because The Weeknd was boycotting the Grammys.
Okay, fair enough. But what I'm saying is there have been times where it's like, oh, here's the surprise. And it's like, well, yeah, we've been hearing rumblings about this for weeks. Yeah. Like that wasn't the case, right? So there was a genuine surprise. Again, I feel like this Grammys gave us fun in a way that I think we needed. And I will say I love the fact that, excuse me, the telecast gave airtime to local businesses that were affected by the LA fires. I thought that was very, very nice. That was very, you know, genuine in a way that just kind of standing there and being like, we're all affected. We're all affected. You know, it's like they're doing something.
Right. And there was a money. I think it was great that
like
the album of the year was presented by the firefighters and first responders. That was great. That was great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I mean, look, I think that award shows, whether you agree with the winners or not, I think award shows, especially nowadays, that we need to like take a break of things.
Escapism.
It's just fun to just sit back and watch and, you know, have people perform and see all that. And, you know, just it's 2-3 hours. If it's the Oscar, it's about 2 days where you're just, you know, thinking about something else. You're
desconectado.
You're distracted by it. I've always liked award shows.
Yeah. And I think also with the Grammys specifically because it is inherently a concert. In a way other award shows aren't. Yeah. It lends itself to that vibe, you know. And again, I enjoyed it a lot. I also thought that everybody won. This is gonna sound weird. Everybody won the award they should have won. You
know what category I thought was like, whoa, was best new artist?
Yes.
I was like, I'm happy with any of these people winning.
I'm good with
they
anybody.
Were all like exceptional.
They were all deserving.
Because sometimes with best new artists, there's a couple of people there that you don't know. Like, who is that? But they were all exceptional. I'm a really big fan of Ray.
She's great.
She's amazing.
I didn't know who she was until the Grammys. Yeah.
Oh no, I have her album. She is amazing. She swept the Brit Awards in England early last year. She's amazing. So yeah, no, it was a good award show.
Yeah, well, all said, you know, and Grammys we can host next year.
I mean,
or we can host the Latin Grammys.
I mean, listen, I'll be happy hosting the raspberry. What is it?
The Razzies.
The Razzies. We can host the Razzies.
We could, but I don't think we're cynical enough.
You don't think so?
Actually, you know what? I think we would be good for the Razzies because you and I enjoy bad movies.
Well,
so no. What I mean is, we wouldn't approach it from the perspective of like, and this piece of crap. Like, we would show up kind of like.
What do you think is the worst movie you've ever seen?
The worst movie I've ever seen.
I have two.
I'm gonna let you go first because I'm.
I think the worst movie. There's two terrible movies. I mean, the worst because there's movies that you watch that are terrible that they're either campy or they're so ridiculous or over the top that you're like, eso fue un paquete. It was exaggerated, but whatever. The two worst movies I think I've seen, one of them was in the 90s or early 2000s, which was the remake of The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh, that was pretty bad.
That was awful. Like that, I think that was the first movie that I'm like, I don't want to finish this. Like, and I saw it in the movie theater.
We saw it in the theaters as a group, right?
Yeah. Like I was like, I don't want to finish watching this. Like, I don't care. Like, this is awful. The second actually, they're interchangeable in terms of the worst. That was awful. Awful was I forgot what it was called. It was a few years ago. It was with the Australian girl that she's Rumor.
Ruby Rose?
No, Rumor, the blonde girl that she's a comedian.
Rumor. Oh, yes. Oh my God. Rumor Wilson?
Wilson. Is it Rumor Wilson? That she lost all the weight?
Rebel.
Rebel Wilson.
Rebel Wilson.
It was
Rumor Willis.
Rumor Willis.
What you were thinking, but yeah, Rebel Willis.
No, but I knew that it wasn't Rumor Willis.
You just forgot the
I knew
name.
it was Demi and Willie and Bruce's
Same
son,
initials.
daughter.
Same initials.
Yeah. Rebel Wilson and Dakota Johnson.
Oh.
They did a movie together.
Yes, with the girl from Community.
That was awful. I mean, it was just Rebel Wilson is a comedian and she wasn't funny.
It was about being single.
It was about being single, and it was just awful. And I remember watching this.
I think it's called that. How to be single.
How to be single.
I think
like
it's
that,
called
yeah.
How to be
I was
single.
like, "Qué tremenda porquería esto!" Like it was like I remember I was in Cine Bistro. I'm like, "Well, at least I had a meal." Like,
yes, How to be single.
it was
2016.
I can't imagine that movie had good reviews.
And the third person, Leslie Mann, Alison Brie.
There we go. Alison Brie from the Community.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw that movie.
6.1 on IMDb, 45% Rotten Tomatoes.
45%. They're being generous. They're being generous.
I did see that movie, and I just remember thinking, why does this exist?
Yeah. I remember like 2 seconds, like I think the credits were about to roll, and like Rebel Wilson's character was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm rich." Like,
yeah, because at least with Dr. Moreau, Dr. Moreau was awful, absolutely awful. But you know what? There is a campness to that movie that is not in that other movie.
No, and I guess they did that movie because it was like Dakota Fanning's like moment after
Dakota Johnson
after I was going to say 31 Flavors after 50 Shades of Grey.
Yes, when she notoriously did that Baskin Robbins BDSM movie.
I'd rather have 31 flavors of ice cream than that bullshit movie. I'm sorry if I offended anybody. I know that movie means a lot to people, but
I'm trying to think, because you know that me.
Did you guys watch that movie? We're all
No, I didn't.
We're all sort of adults here, right?
We're not grown-ups, but we're adults.
It wasn't even
Negative.
It wasn't even like I saw the first one. It wasn't even like hot. Like it was just bad.
It was just there.
Yeah, it was like what? That's how. Let me not even start with Twilight. Go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it's like, again, I love bad movies. Like, but again, my bad movie appreciation is like, a Sleepaway Camp, a Showgirls. It's got to be just something that was so.
High School Musical.
When it was right,
1, 2, and 3.
All of it. Give me the trilogy. But those are movies that I think when they were being made, again, all movies when they're being made, I think are made with like they're not trying to make a bad movie.
Right.
But some movies, I think, midway through just kind of understand what's going on, and they're like, you know what?
It is what it is.
Fuck it. We're just
Call
gonna
it a day.
We're just gonna hire Gina Gershon and embrace this, and just go for it. Like, but I mean, like a bad movie, like así de que I'm like, I can't finish watching this. I don't recall any offhand. Actually, I do recall one offhand, but it's so recent that I wonder if I'm just pulling it out because of its recency,
Right.
as opposed to because it's one of those movies, like Long Tail. Yeah, Emilia Perez, I don't get it.
A lot of people don't get it. Well, she's been having a rough week.
She's been having a bad week as well. Yes, she has. But that movie's just bad.
Yeah.
And again, I like musicals. This was a movie that had music in it. This was not a musical.
Yeah.
This, and again, I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody involved with the movie, but listen, Selena, I love you. I think you're a very talented actress. I think you're great. Yo no le entendí ni cojones lo que decía esa mujer cuando estaba hablando en español. And that's not her fault.
Right.
Because someone hired her to do this
Right.
role, right? This movie just plodded along. Like, again, there was a moment where I told you this. There was a moment we were watching it at home, and because it's a Netflix movie, and Jose was like, "Oh, I gotta go to the bathroom." I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna press pause." I thought the movie lo que le faltaban eran 20 minutos. No, we were only 40 minutes in of like a 2-hour movie.
Oh.
That movie is so just I don't know who that movie's for.
Yeah.
That's my big, like, that's my, when there's like bad movies, that's the first question I always ask. Who is this for? Who did they, when they were making this movie, say, you know who the audience for this is? It's X, Y, and Z.
So when you were going to answer what is the worst movie you've ever seen, I got a little nervous for a minute because I'm like, if you say what I thought you were going to say, I don't care that we're recording the show and we're on video. I'm going to have the fight with you.
Oh, well,
and we don't need to have the fight 10 times.
Let me be very clear. You're talking about Titanic. I don't like Titanic, but I don't think Titanic is a bad movie.
Okay.
Titanic has
Titanic
has a plot.
I'll take it.
Titanic has good.
Stop it there.
I just don't like the movie.
Okay. I'll take it. Okay. We can move on.
It's not the greatest movie ever made.
But Shia LaBeouf was in the greatest game ever played.
You know.
Did you see that movie?
No, I didn't.
That movie was amazing. I have that movie on Blu-ray. Like,
oh, really?
I love sports inspirational movies. Give me Miracle any day. Like, whenever I'm depressed, I'm like, I'm going to watch Miracle.
I'm going to watch that hockey
Miracle
team
on the
win,
ice.
damn it.
Have you seen Miracle? No. If you're having a shitty day, watch Miracle.
Okay.
So for those of you who don't know, Miracle is I think it's from the early 2000s.
So many of the things you love.
The Olympics, like
sports movies,
and sports inspirational movies.
And I mean, based on Dr. Zhivago, Ice.
I mean, they probably was bringing a ship.
Yeah.
And then
I'm sure they took a ship somewhere.
They took a ship somewhere. It's about the 1980 Olympics, Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, New York, when that was sort of the middle of the Cold War between the Russians and the Americans, and the finals for the men's hockey was the Russians versus the Americans, and the Russians were like the shoe-in, like the Americans was like this scrappy little team that was like, not as the big powerful Russians, and somehow the Americans beat the Russians, and they call it Miracle on the Ice. And there was a movie in the early 2000s called Miracle with Kurt Russell that is just fantastic, and I think it's one of the best sports inspirational movies.
I think Kurt Russell is underappreciated.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Kurt Russell's ever turned in a bad performance, but nobody ever talks about like, coño, se la comió Kurt Russell.
You know what's a great, a great like feel good movie?
Tango
Overboard.
Oh.
Overboard.
That is a fun movie.
With Goldie Hawn and him, Kurt Russell. Yeah. That movie is hilarious. Yeah. Hilarious. I rewind it. Like I will put it just to watch that scene when she tells off the teacher. Ella prácticamente le dice que tiene animales en la casa. And when she notices he has a rash, she tells her off good. Like, it's great. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, you can never go wrong with Goldie Hawn.
Yeah. So, and I love their daughter.
Oh, well, yes.
Kate Hudson, I think, I've said this all the time. To me, Kate Hudson is like one of the most beautiful women in the world.
Effortlessly beautiful.
Yeah. And she has like a nice balance of like cute girl next door, but she can also look hot. Like,
right.
She's like perfect.
And then she's also an investor in Fabletics. So, she's got a mind.
She's an investor. I only know Fabletics because Demi Lovato was her spokesperson for a bit.
Well, Kate Hudson was one of the first people to promote it.
Oh.
And also she has a tequila brand, but everybody does now.
Everybody does now. We're going to have one soon.
I think we should.
Yeah. No, we would do rum.
We would have to do rum. Yeah.
We're Caribbean folk.
That's true.
So what do you have?
Well, let me see. Let me check my little topic list here, because that's how we do, because if not, I'll forget shit. I wanted to bring up I have a couple things here. All right. I want to bring up something that actually you were the one who kind of tipped me off to it, and I didn't know it existed.
Oh, I wonder what it is.
Okay. So you sent me a video the other day through Instagram about somebody basically going on, I don't want to say a tirade, but they posted this whole thing about how, like, offering cake at work can be triggering and offensive.
No, she said that. And when you're in a public setting and they're cutting a cake and they're going to give you a slice, if you say, "Oh, can I have a small slice?" It's triggering to people that are overweight.
Right.
I had never thought about that, but
Well, no, because it's not about other people at that moment. It's about what I want to eat.
Right. Maybe you just don't want a big slice. You want a sliver. No tienes mucha hambre.
Right.
Tienes la azúcar alta.
Or maybe tengo diabetes. You don't know my life.
Yeah.
But it led me down the rabbit hole of, because I was like, what? No. And so the caption said that this person who was posting it is a weight stigma czar, which I didn't even know were 3 words you could string together, much less that it would be a taxpayer funded position in the city of San Francisco. So
czar. We're using Russian words.
Russia's a theme today in our show. So apparently, the San Francisco Department of Public Health hired this person. She's a consultant. I'm almost afraid to say she because I don't know. The consultant on weight stigma and weight neutrality. And this person is a self-described anti-weight-based discrimination expert who describes herself as a prominent advocate for fat positivity and body acceptance. So my question is, I mean, look, San Francisco's got so many problems. Is weight stigma...
It's not their best time.
Is weight stigma really the most pressing one amongst, let's just pick one, the homeless community? Like, are the homeless really afraid of being weight stigmatized?
Look, I feel that that's on the one hand and on the other hand type thing. Obviously, people that are overweight, and we're talking about like majorly overweight, right? There is a stigma to it, and they face an amount of discrimination and rejection, especially women, that we couldn't understand or relate to. I don't know if you need a public funded or paid for czar to do that. And I think that there is something good about body positivity
100%.
Because obviously, again, especially as women, I mean, we're men talking about this, but really this affects women the most. You know, there is body shaming issues with women that are just maybe 10, 15 pounds overweight. And, you know, we will never fully understand that as guys. So I think anything that, you know, takes away that stigma a bit and does have body positivity, I agree with that. But there's a difference between body positivity that you're a person, you know, if you know, a woman with curves, or
you
a
should
person
not be made to feel
that,
bad.
a person that, you know, maybe is some overweight, you know, there's a difference between that and then a lot of people that are like 200, 300 pounds overweight, right?
It's a medical
situation. That's a medical, like,
situation.
And I understand that people that are that overweight, generally it's just not a situation of like, oh, you should eat less. Like, you know, there's a lot of reasons why that can happen. Maybe you're depressed, you're struggling with mental health. Maybe you have a thyroid issue. Maybe you have a health issue. Maybe you do overeat. Maybe you binge eat. I mean, there's a plethora
and there's always
of
a
different
reason for overeating.
For it. And you know, it's very easy to say, oh, you could lose, you know, you just need to stop eating. You know, I mean, I struggle with weight too. I want to lose 20 damn pounds and like it takes forever and it's so frustrating. So imagine somebody who's that overweight and just feels helpless. So I always try to give people like that a little bit of grace. Again, I don't think it needs a taxpayer position.
That's my problem.
And I also
to what end?
And I also don't think that unless they're shaming you, which they shouldn't be, I don't think that people should need to modify their behavior for very specific things. Like what she was saying, like, oh, you know, it's very triggering when somebody says to give me a smaller piece of cake. Well, maybe they just want a smaller piece of cake.
It's not about you.
It's not about you. I mean, maybe they just don't. Maybe they don't have a sweet tooth. Maybe they, you know, there's so many reasons why they would want a smaller piece of cake. Maybe they don't want it to be wasted. That's another thing, you know, like, why are you going to give me a big piece of cake?
If I know I'm not going to eat it
Because I think the counter to that was like, oh, well, if you don't want a big piece of cake, then don't eat it. Just don't say anything. Right. But now you're throwing away food. Right. Yeah, it's a cake, but, you know, it's food.
It's still food.
It's still food. Right. Now you're throwing away food because you feel uncomfortable that somebody's going to say, give me a smaller...
Potentially feel uncomfortable.
Right. So I think that's whatever. That's a lot of fluff. But what I do agree with, actually, there is these people that I think we follow them on the podcast called plus size park hoppers. And it's these this is a group of 5 friends, and they range from like, I think, 2XL to like 6XL. So they run the spectrum of like, you know, bigger women. And they go all around Disney and Disney World parks, and they show things that it's for people that are that big. You know, can you ride on Tron? Will you fit?
Right.
right? You know what? Sometimes I'm not even half that size, and sometimes I get on these carnival rides, and I'm like, whoa, see, if I gain 1 more pound, this is not going to close, right? And you know, a lot of, especially women that are that heavy, they also have breasts,
right? They're chesty.
So it's those are things that we don't think about, but those are things that are part of their reality. So I think that type of content is helpful because they go around and they're like, okay, look, in this ride, maybe you need an extender, but in this other ride, they don't offer extenders. In this type of ride, it's one of those over the head, over the chest sort of harness things. In some, you don't. So those are things that, you know what, it is helpful to know, because if you want to go to a theme park, you don't also want to be in that situation that you want to get in a ride and then you don't fit on it, and then it's so embarrassing and humiliating and everybody's seeing you in the queue. And so I agree with that type of content. You know, they even talk about like the chairs, like in certain restaurants, like, oh, these restaurants have plastic chairs, so if you're over this weight, you know, maybe it's not the best for you. Those are things that we never think about, but if you are overweight like that, you do think about them. And I think that type of content is helpful. But you know, I think that I saw her content, and a lot of it is a little, I don't want to be offensive, but I think a lot of it is a little ridiculous.
Look, you have to draw the line somewhere. I think, to your point, the plus size park hoppers, it's about like, look, you know what, this is who we are and this is our reality, and we're gonna share, you know, this and this and that. But I think that if your content is all about how, like, you know, oh, I'm overweight, so now it's everyone else's problem, right? No, it's not. I'm not going to shame you, and I'm not going to make you feel less than, but I'm not going to change my life because you are living your life the way you want.
Right. Because there's a certain thing with accommodating people, and a certain thing, especially when you're not actively trying to offend them.
Right.
You know, sometimes people want you to do something and it's a big ask. You know, and it's very specific, and you know, it's a little complicated. I
would like to put her though in a room with Dr. No from My 600 Pound Life.
Do you know that you got me into that show?
I really enjoy that show. But you know, to your point, that show, look, if you boil it down, that show's like, oh, it's overweight people who have to lose weight, right?
Yeah,
fair enough.
This is more than overweight.
But what I'm saying is, to what you were saying, they meet with psychologists and therapists to find out what's the underlying cause. Right. There's always something else there. You know, it's never just about the overeating. It's the overeating because of, right? So it's not just as simple many times as you've said. You know, it's like, oh, we'll just lose the weight. I'm like, well, yeah, no, duh. If it was that easy, we'd all be supermodels.
Somebody that overweight can't even exercise.
Right. And so, okay, what is the root cause of all of this, right? So I actually genuinely do enjoy that show. I do.
And I love Dr. Production.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
He's such a savage.
He's great. I love him because he just comes in there and he's just like, my favorite is when they're like, but I'm going to be malnourished or whatever. And he'll be like, you've had 25 years of being overnourished. You are okay. You will not die.
You will not die. You will not die. So, ¿qué más tienes en tu listica?
My listica. I do have one more thing in my listica.
One more thing.
So, I saw something recently, and I was like, you know, let me save it. So, this was actually from the Wall Street Journal.
Oh,
okay. So it's gonna be like, it's not serious, but it's, you know. But I feel like when you say Wall Street Journal, people go, oh.
Like, I feel I need to improve my posture.
Of course.
Wall Street Journal.
Absolutely.
This is 2020.
So does that make me Hugh Downs?
I'm Barbara Walters, and I'm Hugh Downs.
So according to this article, and again, I'm saying article when the reality is I kind of just did a snapshot of their Instagram post.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We know how you did.
You know, this is my way. They're saying Americans in their 30s have never looked less like grown-ups.
Oh, well, yeah.
And I feel like, okay, so I'm here. But what they're saying is that because of steep declines in homeownership, marriage, and birth rates, economists have been warning that young people are struggling to meet the milestones of adulthood. And although some are consciously choosing a less traditional path, many are saying that it's just something that is out of reach. So Richard Reeves, who's the president of probably the most horribly named institute I've ever heard of, the American Institute for Boys and Men, says,
wow.
It's just not like rethink the name.
Okay.
Richard. He says we're moving from later to never. He notes that the longer people take to launch into a more conventional adulthood, the less likely they are to do it at all. What do you think about that?
But it's just only in the way you dress?
No. It's in everything. So, like, for instance, a third of today's young adults will never marry. There's a conservative think tank projects that compared to less than a fifth of those born in previous decades. The share of childless adults under 50 who say they're unlikely to have kids rose 10 percentage points between 2018 and 2023, from 37% to 47%, according to Pew Research Center. And then they quoted this guy,
I think
Cody Harding, who said, after watching his parents raise 3 kids and buy a house on his parents' salaries in retail and manufacturing, he assumed being the first in his family to earn a bachelor's degree would give him a better life than they did. And it's fine trying to reinvent.
It's a failure to launch.
Failure to launch. Yeah. It's like, I did that already. I want to grow up, but they can't, or they aren't.
Okay. So I think there's a lot to that.
There's
First,
a lot
I'm
to
going to
unpack.
address the dressing issue.
Okay.
I think I dress younger now that I'm in my 40s than I did when I was younger. When I was in my 20s, I was Mr. Banana Republic.
You love the Gap.
And the Gap, no, I still love the Gap.
Yeah, no.
I still love the Gap.
No, but you love the Polo.
Right. No. But in my 20s, especially, I was like Mr. Banana Republic. I used to dress very conservatively, I was, I don't know, going to, I don't know.
Yeah. How many job interviews were you on your way to?
Yeah. I was going to I don't know, have a drink, a bourbon at a very fancy, midday club
with leather chairs
at, in New York City. I looked straight out of a catalog, J. Crew and Banana Republic. For me, I dress younger now because I think I have the confidence now that I didn't have in my 20s. Fair. Now I'm more I'm going to a nice restaurant and I'm wearing Jordans. And you know what? Whoever doesn't like it
doesn't have
to like it. Right. I like it. So I think that's just confidence that you get as you become older and you care less really about things. And I think you're dressing for a lot of people, the way they dress correlates with that, that they didn't maybe, and for me also, in my teens, especially, I had like any teen, I had a lot of insecurities and things I wouldn't wear and whatever. So I just think that comes with age. As far as the failure to launch, I think it's a lot of different reasons. I think people now that don't want to have kids don't have kids. It's not like
they don't feel that pressure.
They don't feel the pressure of having kids, and they see that they could have a very fulfilled life without children. And that includes getting married as well. You don't have to get married.
Relationships are very redefined now.
You don't have to. I think people now are more open. Those options have always existed, but I think that people now, since more people are subscribing to those theories, I think they feel less pressure to get married and have kids and all that. So I think there's a part of that. But I also think that a main part of it is the financial issues, because I was also reading something the other day that a household in today's economy here in South Florida that makes $175,000 combined, $175,000.
That's a substantial chunk of change.
Do not make enough money to buy a house.
Right.
And so you're not talking about 2 people that are working minimum wage. Right. You're talking about 2 people that are probably both professionals or have pretty good jobs. Right? They're making close to $200,000 combined. So
and they can't afford a house.
Right. So, of course, you're not going to be able to buy a house at 25 like your parents did. Right. And of course, and it's just...
You're going to have to delay certain things.
You have to delay certain things.
It just is what it is.
It is. And then, now we're in a conundrum that, okay, maybe some people couldn't buy a house, but you could rent.
Right. Well, now rent is as expensive.
It's almost as expensive as buying. So it's not like, okay, well, no, you got married, you have a kid, maybe you can't buy a house, but you can rent an apartment or a house for $1,000, $1,200 a month. Nope. Now it's like, oh, that'll be $3,500 or more. Right. So I just think that is probably one of the greatest factors of it, that people just cannot afford it. They cannot afford it. Jobs don't pay well.
Especially not here in South Florida.
They don't pay well. the average salary, I think, in Miami-Dade County is like under $30,000, under $40,000.
Sounds about right. 40, 50.
That's no, under 40. Like that is low.
Like what do you
for a city that like it's like big money ballers? Like that's
a kind of conversation.
That's right. I know,
Yeah.
but that is low, and I think nationwide it's not that
much better.
Much better either.
Yeah.
So with the way that things are financially, and they've been like that for quite some time. Like this just didn't happen overnight. It just makes it higher. And you know what I always find really funny is that, and again, this is a cultural thing. This is 100% a cultural thing. For us as Latin people, multi-generational living is a way of life.
It's just
like it's not like, of course your abuela lives with you, your abuelos.
Yeah.
You know, like
that's just
how do they not, right? Multi-generational living is just very, very common. So I think that to a lot of people, and in Latin culture especially, but I think that to a lot of people maybe that are American or whatever, that's not the way they did it. You know, you get married or you move out, you get your house, you get your apartment, you have your kids and blah, blah, blah. And you many times live in a different city and blah.
Right.
So now that they're having trouble doing that and
le están pisando el callo.
Right. And the potential of living with their family or their parents is such a foreign sort of like what concept. I think they have a harder time dealing with us.
It's so funny.
Whereas us, it's like, mira, vamos a hacerle un cuarto atrás de la casa, una adición, con un baño,
right?
Okay, con un walk-in closet.
Con el social security que le entra, pagamos el
garaje
mortgage.
Lo vamos a convertir en un cuarto. En un cuarto. Like that's so common.
It's just what you do.
So common, you know.
It's just what you do. It's funny you say that though, because yesterday we were watching. There's a show on Max. That's this girl who has Tourette's and she's 21 years old and she lives at home and this and that. And her whole thing is like, I wish I could live alone. My goal is to live alone. I'm 21 and I'm still at home with my parents. And I was like,
I've said this story.
I was like, and?
I've said this story many times. When I was in law school, I remember the girls that I was friends with. It was like 3-4 girls that I was very good friends with them throughout my law school years. One day we were having lunch and I sort of was off to myself and the girls were chatting and they were talking about some guy that was in our section in our classes. And they were like, oh, so-and-so, he's so cute. He's so cute. Oh, he's hot. But, he's a bit of a loser. And, he's a loser. He's like, because he was a little older than us.
Okay.
He's like 26 and he lived with his parents. And I was like, what? I'm like, you think he's a loser because he was like 25 or 26 and he lived with his parents? I was like, girl, in Miami from a Latin household, you're 26 and you're living with your parents unless you got married.
Right.
Or, whatever. I mean, if you got to a certain age, I guess in your 40s, okay, maybe you'll move out.
Right.
But in your 20s, no. You're living with your grandparents.
That's fine.
You're your
parents, yeah.
But that's a cultural thing. That's very normal within our culture.
Yeah.
That when you finish high school, you
go to college, but you live at home, right?
And you live at home.
Yeah.
And then, tienes tu trabajito.
Right.
You buy your Honda Accord or your Honda Civic. You go on your little vacations with your girlfriend or your boyfriend.
You take a 6-day cruise.
You go on a Carnival cruise and, you go to New York in the winter.
Right.
But, you live at home with your parents.
Right, yeah.
And, cuando ya la novia, when you and the girlfriend ya tienen confianza, and the parents de la novia, the parents del novio, they're in their 20s. She could sleep over maybe a couple of times.
Relajo con orden, pero,
Very that's so, you know what? We're laughing at that,
but you just described
that is the way it is for most people, right?
Yeah.
And to them, that's such a foreign concept.
It really is.
It's like, what do you mean? You think he's the loser because he lives at home with his parents?
At 25, todavía le quedan como 5
I was
años.
like, I moved out of my house to come here, and I lived with my parents.
Right,
like,
and when I leave here, going back to the house.
Yeah. Bueno, you were there the day, because Ish helped me move to the Midwest.
Yeah.
Ishmael, so we drove up to Michigan, Ishmael was at my house because he drove with me when I did the goodbye with my parents. That looked like I was being drafted to like World War III. Like,
I think there were people in the late 60s, early 70s whose children went to Vietnam that looked less terrified.
That was, eso era un show. Un show. Do you remember that when I drove away, I stopped the car in the corner of the street and broke down?
Yes. It hadn't even been a block.
Like I broke down.
It hadn't even been. We hadn't even left the 2-mile radius of his house.
I was like, qué malos papeles, right? Oh, what bad papers. Whatever. When you moved to New York, you were like 30 something. So don't give me that, you know.
Oh no, but I'm just saying. I'm not saying.
Right. So whatever. Anyway,
wait, what year were you? Or what? How old were you when you moved?
When I went to law school, I was
and
like,
Ish helped you in that.
I was
story?
in my 30s.
No.
In that story,
law
we're the
school,
same age.
I was 24.
So I was 23.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. No, but when Ish moved to New York, de viejo. Like,
No. But you breaking down at the end of the street, we needed some preface and some numbers to go with that.
Yeah. No.
Okay, it's not like he was like 42. Right?
No. I was 23. That was the first time I had left home, and y el niño, and and then it was what I would, for me personally, when I left to law school, it was my grandmother. It was like my grandmother, because my grandmother is like the love of my life. Like it was leaving my grandmother. I was like. That's why when I moved to Michigan, my grandmother would call me every single day to wake me up.
That's right.
I was already up, but I would let her do it.
She was his alarm clock.
She was my alarm clock. You know that that was the thing with my grandmother. Button, my grandmother was all her grandkids' alarm clocks. At one point or another, she would call all 4 of her grandkids to wake her up. So, yeah. So anyway,
on that note,
this is soda time.
Yes.
Tenemos sé.
We
so
do.
We're ready for our last soda.
We do. We are thirsty because
I actually want to give my last soda to somebody who has been a guest here on Pero. Let me tell you.
Oh,
and this past week at the Grammys, this person who is a musical icon has been in the game for over 40 years, won her first Grammy.
Yeah.
So I would like to give our last soda to Sheila E.
Yes, friend of the pod.
She's been here on the show, and it's one of those things that, like, I never really stopped to think about it. She's never won a Grammy.
Right.
She won it for her remix album or her cover album.
For her salsa album.
For Bemba Colorada. Yeah. So there's the whole, connection. And I just think I think it's great. She's put in her 60s?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she wins her first Grammy. For somebody who's a veteran, like she has been in the music industry for over 40 years.
And a name.
Right. She was a protege of Prince, and
she's in We Are the World.
And she's had so many, right. She was in We Are the World. She's had so many, like, she's sort of like a chameleon. Like, she's had so many genres. Like, she did like the work with Prince, and she did like pop music. She's done Latin music. Yeah, obviously tocaba los timbales. Now she did a cover of like it was all of Celia Cruz, right?
Well, no. The album, it was a salsa album. It was her first salsa album.
Right.
Celia's was a cover, but the rest of them, there were probably some covers in there, but a lot of it was original.
Right. But, she's done so many genres of music. I mean, she's a true artist, like a true musician. And this was her first Grammy. So last soda to Sheila E.
Sheila E. I love it when we can award a friend of the pod. Jeez
Coño.
That was loud.
Okay, you caught that on video.
Yes, because we both jumped. Like, that was a jump scare.
Did you guys hear that at home? Don't drive off the road.
Oh, no, we may have caused accidents. We have no liability. Coño, my ass, seriously, that caught me off guard.
I thought he was going to cue in Glamorous Life by Sheila E.
But no, my heart's still...
Or Love Bizarre.
My heart's still going a little bit. Actually, it's funny you gave your last soda to Sheila E. for her Grammy win, because I'm going to give my last soda. It's also Grammy related. I'm going to give it to Sabrina Carpenter's performance at the Grammys.
I'll tell you about that song.
Okay, so I will say this. What I loved about it is, Sabrina Carpenter, like I said earlier, everybody won the award they should have won. She won Best Pop Vocal, Best Pop Album or whatever. But what I loved about it is that at this point in her espresso career, she must be really sick of singing that song. Like as popular as it got her, brought her to this point, she must be very sick of this song. So I love the fact that she found a way to do it in a way that is, okay, you guys I'm going to give you espresso, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to show my comedy chops. Cause I mean, she's a comedic actress, she's a child actress.
And this is like her 5th album, right?
Her 6th album.
Right.
I don't know if you knew this. I didn't know this until after the fact. She was paying homage in the opening to a special from like 1970 something that Goldie Hawn did, where Goldie Hawn did the exact same descending the staircase thing. So here's somebody who she's doing the singing, she's giving you the song you want, she's doing something different, she's being funny, she's being cute, and she's paying an homage to an icon. Like I do love, and Sabrina Carpenter, somebody actually even did a thing of like, why is Sabrina Carpenter wearing all of Fran Drescher's old outfits from The Nanny? And it was like, she seems to be somebody who understands how to just keep things fresh and how to keep it fun.
She did an homage to Madonna in the VMAs.
In the VMAs, she did.
She was
Madonna.
dressed like Madonna.
So I love this performance. It was fun. It was cute. It was bubbly. It was, it gave us everything that I think we kind of needed as one of the first performances of the night.
So I had a Josh Groban moment with her.
You just gave in.
I just gave in. That song when it came out, I was like, whoa.
I
was like, this song sucks. This song sucks. So cute. This is not the type of music that I generally listen to. Block. And then I added it to my playlist. I'm like, you know what? You won, Sabrina Carpenter. You won. Mira that I fought against liking that song, but it's like, you know what? Fine, because I'm all about the lyrics.
Have you listened to like her album?
No.
Okay, her lyrics are fun. Like she has a way with words.
I'm all about lyrics, right? And the lyrics of that song are silly.
They are silly, but like again. There's certain things that I can appreciate, like the fact, like one of the lyrics, like switch it on like Nintendo, like that's clever. Yeah. I can appreciate.
One day
clever.
I was like humming. I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, and I kept singing the song, and I'm like, fine, Sabrina Carpenter, you won.
There are worse songs.
To
having your
worse songs,
but again, I think that performance was just so fun and so cute, and it was a good kickoff in a way, with the Grammys. So Sabrina Carpenter's.
Charlie XCX performance was pretty darn good.
I wanted to like it, and it just left me there.
I liked it. She's another one that she's having a moment, and she's been around for like 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
But good for them in their moments.
Better late than never. Listen, Sheila won her first Grammy.
Yeah, it's 40 some years into her career. So, all right, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We hope you listened, laughed, and learned. And as always, remember to grab your croqueta, your pastelito, and your cafecito. And thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great, great weekend.
Cuídense, mi gente.
Bye.